So Sally Krawcheck recently wrote in a Washington Post article that women are the key to successful businesses. Apparently, we have inherently feminine traits that would make us better CEOs. You know what? I have heard this story before. I'm not sure I'm buying it. With me now is Marc Rudov, a branding expert. Marc, thanks for joining us. Let's get right to it. I want to run through some of the traits that Sally Krawcheck thinks makes women better leaders, better CEOs. So we're more risk adverse. We place greater emphasis on interpersonal relationships, and we're more long-term oriented. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I do believe that women are more risk averse, and that's not going to solve the problems. If you want to save the economy, the first thing you have to do is diagnose what's wrong with the economy. We have a $16 trillion debt, $1.3 trillion deficit, 23 million people are unemployed, bloated government, high taxes and regulations. John Stossel's done segment after segment on regulations. So I'd like to know how estrogen is going to be better than testosterone at solving these problems.
Well, I mean,
the thing is that if you're going to solve these problems, you need to take risks to solve them, not be risk averse. And the whole nurturing bit in the workplace, come on, it's a business, not the Girl Scouts. And Melissa, women have a lot of power in this country, much more than men. Women are the majority of the electorate, the majority of the workforce. They control most of the wealth in this country.
Well,
they make most of the retail purchases, and they have 60% of college degrees. So with all that power, if women were going to solve it, how come they're not doing it?
Okay, give me the power to interrupt you right here. We don't occupy more C-suites. That's one place that women aren't in control. What about the emphasis on interpersonal relationships? I mean, that would help both in probably a geopolitical sense and in a business setting.
Well, I love that point, because if you ask most women whether they'd rather have male bosses or female bosses, they'll tell you they'd rather have male bosses. So the interpersonal relationships, I mean, we're running a business here.
Hey, where are you getting that from? Where do you get that from? I'm not sure that's true.
Take a poll in your office. Go into any company and ask.
Okay.
Because I've done it. I've done it. No, seriously.
Okay.
But the thing is that, interpersonal relationships, what do you mean by that? Does that mean you know how to lead and to get people to follow? Does it mean you're best friends with your direct reports? What does that mean?
Yeah,
well, you can't succeed in this world. You can't succeed in this world without having good rapport with people.
I'm not sure I agree with this article either, but you're sort of putting me in a position where I feel like I want to disagree with you. Regardless, though, I mean, let's look at some of the most successful women in a business setting, or at least some of the most prominent women who have made it to the top tier of their field. And I'm not sure they qualify under her characteristics. I mean, one is Erin Callan, very famously put out in the front of Lehman Brothers right before it fell. She had worked for Credit Suisse from September 2008 to 2009. It only lasted 6 months. She's a very prominent female in the banking industry. I'm not sure, though, that her feminine qualities necessarily, there she is, necessarily helped her stay on the top once she got there. If she's long-term oriented, it didn't necessarily work out in those settings.
Well, the hypothesis that feminine qualities save the day is just a false hypothesis. There's leadership and there's non-leadership. Stephen Covey wrote The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. He didn't have a separate chapter on men and a separate chapter on women. Effectiveness is effectiveness, and it's gender neutral.
Yeah.
So you either know how to lead people and work numbers, or you don't.
Yeah, and Sally Krawcheck herself has had somewhat of an interrupted career, of course. I mean, she was the head of Bank of America's wealth business from 2009 only to 2011. She was at Citigroup, where she famously, didn't necessarily get along with Vikram Pandit and, left there. So I don't know. Anyway, interesting study. Thanks for coming on and talking about it. And you actually made me sort of lean back towards maybe liking it. But anyway, Marc Rudov, thanks for joining us, branding expert. We appreciate your time.